My family history is of a small family, but we were close. Myself, of the eldest of 3 children, all girls, and my father was away in the war and didn't see me till I was about 4 years old. I don't know very much about what my father did in the war because he was a very closed man as far as talking about the war. I do know he was in Greece and it was very cold, and I do know he was in Italy. He was in the 8th Army, and I do know he was also in Africa, and I do have a picture of him on horseback in the desert. One time he told us that the company had adopted this little dog because it followed them all the way through Italy. That's all I really know. I really don't know what my father was. He used to go to London every day to work, and he was a businessman, and really I didn't know. And my mother actually, before the war, taught gym and dancing, and she had her own studio, and and she would go to various schools. I was born in Bishop Auckland, which is in the North County Durham, and right after the war we moved down to Bexhill-on-Sea, which is on the south coast of England, and it's near Hastings and Eastbourne and Brighton. All I can remember about my childhood was that it was wonderful.
But what's your earliest childhood memory?
Being a child in my pram, which here is a push chair, and whoever was walking me frightened me to death because they would push me and then catch me, and I remember thinking, oh, don't do that. We used to play cards every Sunday night. In England we call them patience, and you put them all out and then you turned them over and you had to remember where one was, and then you paired it up with another one. It was a good memory one. Or we'd play fish, which was fun. We got to Birmingham, and Mummy and Daddy wanted me to go to this girls' school, Edgbaston High School for girls. And we had a uniform, and it was a lovely uniform. We had nice green tunic and a lovely tusser-coloured blouse, and then camel coats, and you had to wear your uniform, and then 3/4 socks and brown lace-up shoes, and a hat and what have you. And we all had it, so you didn't think anything about it. And because I hadn't really been to a very good school in Bexhill, my parents had to get me a little private tutoring so that I would fit in with my age group at Edgbaston High School. We did all sorts of things, played tennis, played netball. We used to collect stamps of all things, and I found my stamp album the other day, and it's absolutely gorgeous because I would have aunties that would send me, that was in North Borneo, and she would send me all these beautiful stamps, things like that. I am one of those people, if I can't read, I have a problem. I love reading, and my father was the same. He used to have 7 Sunday newspapers because the newspapers would come on a Sunday. So I read everything, and it was super. Oh, well, we always had to set the table and keep our bedrooms clean and tidy and do the washing up. I can remember my father, Sunday lunch was always big, all right? We always had a lot on the table, and the roast, whatever it was, either pork or beef and what have you. And my father, and I really wasn't very old, we didn't have a dishwasher or anything in those days. These were the 40s. And I would have a big apron around me and stand at the kitchen sink and wash all the dishes and dry them. I met my husband Eric in Toronto, and we were in the apartments on Lascelles Boulevard, and there were 5 apartment buildings, and Eric was on the 17th floor and I was on the 7th floor. And one day I was in the elevator and this really nice Irishman who was an acquaintance said, "Oh, Gillian, I'd like you to meet Eric Adams," but I didn't hear his name because the elevator was crowded. So I thought, how am I going to find out his name? So I have to tell this story, you can leave it out. I thought, how can I find out what his name is? So I thought, well, I'll look in the apartment where all the letters are, because they've got the names of all the people in the apartments. So I looked, because I knew he was on the 7th floor, and I knew who 2 of his roommates were. So I decided that his name was Robert Lord. So I said to my cousin, "Oh, I've met," and I told her that I'd met him. So I said, "Oh, well, the next time we go down on the elevator together and we're walking across to the subway, I'll introduce you." I'll never forget this as long as I live. So we get out of the elevator and Eric was there as well. So I said we started to walk across the park to the subway, and I said to Susan, "Oh, Susan, I'd very much like you to meet Bob Lord." And Eric says, "My name's not Bob Lord, it's Eric Adams." And of course, my cousin Susan was a real tease, and she said, didn't even know his name, all the way to the subway. Anyway, of course, I never forgot it, and it was a family joke, as you can imagine. And people would tease me and everything like that. We started to go out, and he was so interesting. From the word go, he would chat and we'd have conversations, and I was just fascinated with his memory, because he could remember things about his childhood, and I was just amazed. And he would entertain me, and if he did anything, and it lasted almost to the day he died, he would tell me things and he would give all the details, which I thought was wonderful because I was hopeless at doing that.
Do you remember your first date?
Yes. My first date with Eric was going out for supper in Toronto to just a lovely restaurant, and it's a chain, and I just can't quite remember, but it was in Toronto, and it was a lovely meal. I thoroughly enjoyed myself.
Do you remember how he popped the question? How did he propose?
My husband proposed to me on an island in Georgian Bay. We had gone to this friend's cottage with other friends. We were walking around the island and having just a lovely time. And Eric looked at me and he said, "Would you marry me?" So I said, "I sure will." My most memorable trip was to South Africa, to Kenya. It was our first trip, and we'd been married 3 years. We left in about March of 1970, exactly. And we had planned this trip with an aunt of mine who lived in Cape Town, and then we were going to go and stay in Kenya with one of Eric's very good friends that he'd grown up with in Edinburgh. Oh, I did go to a wonderful animal park, and we also did one in South Africa and one in Kenya, and they were wonderful. The animals, they were I wouldn't have missed them for anything. I suppose it was a safari. We went to the safari in Cape Town and safari in Kenya, and we had the most wonderful time. If you had seen those, it was just absolutely mind-blowing, and the animals were just beautiful, and we saw all of them. I don't know if I should tell you this funny story, but 1970, so we were staying with Auntie Eni and Uncle George, and they had their spare room, the two most narrow beds that you have ever seen. So, I mean, you couldn't get two people in them. You know, we were quite happy and everything, and we had a wonderful stay. When I wrote afterwards, which was quite a while because we'd been up to Kenya, I said to Auntie Eni, "Oh, Auntie Eni, I'm going to have a baby in November." So she wrote back and she said, "Gillian, that's wonderful. We do hope it happened in Cape Town." And all Eric and I could think about were these narrow beds that two people couldn't get into. So that was my joke. Anyway, so we lived in Toronto just for a short while, and then we moved to Ottawa in '69. That's right. And we were there till 2000. Life in Ottawa was wonderful, really was. We played a lot of tennis, we did all sorts of things, and the children will tell you, I mean, they're grown up now, but they will tell you that Ottawa was one of the most wonderful places to grow up in. It was so interesting, and Eric worked on Parliament Hill, and so he always knew what was going on. And I cannot tell you what a wonderful place it was. Still is.
What were the politicians like?
They were lovely. Oh, they were really, and very interesting. Eric, because he was in research, got to meet a lot of them, and he would tell me all about them, and I always knew what was going on in Parliament. And sometimes I'd go up to one of the sections and watch Parliament, and it was fascinating.
What were your most joyous times?
Do you know, I know this sounds silly, but honestly, my whole life, I've just enjoyed so much. I cannot really pick one particular one out. I was very proud, and I loved having our two children. And I was pleased when I got my BA, you know, my bachelor degree from Huron. And I loved my wedding. So, you know, those are the kind of things, they're pretty important, but I can't, all of them were wonderful.
So can you think of a time that was a very hard time through life? Loss of a parent?
Okay. Eric, as I had already said, was a great conversationalist, and he was in Spruce Lodge, and unfortunately he'd had a stroke, so he was in a wheelchair. And I would go from Anne Hathaway, where I am now, to Spruce Lodge every day. Not every day, sorry. At least 3 or 4 times a week. And we would talk about our life. And we had lots to talk about, and he would remember all the funny occasions and remind me of things that I'd forgotten. And it was a very, very happy time. And I know that sounds silly because the poor man couldn't walk, but you see, he could talk and his brain was still active. So, I mean, it was just the same. And Spruce Lodge was wonderful. I thought it was just great. They were so nice, and, you know, I got to know them. And then, unfortunately, he died, and I got a terrible shock. And he died just the day of the Kentucky Derby. And I was so cross with him. I was just talking to him and saying something, and I walked over, and he'd gone. And I just, you know, I was really, really upset. I thought, You've got to get over it because you're on your own now. But because of Anne Hathaway and because of how kind people are, and I received all sorts of cards, and people remembered Eric and what he'd done, and it made me feel wonderful. I remember getting a letter telling me about what Eric had done for this person and how much he'd appreciated it. So it was terrific.
One place that you think people should visit?
New Zealand. It's a long way away, but New Zealand is a wonderful country, and we had the most wonderful time. The people, I think it's because it's so far away, but were just so welcoming, and they'd talk, and we were recommended by friends to get on one of their buses, and we went everywhere on this bus, and we had the most wonderful driver. His name was Barton, and he wore a Panama hat, and he chatted away, told us all these things, and it was just so interesting, all the things about, you know, where we went and what we did. And we stayed in a couple of bed and breakfasts, and we just had a wonderful, wonderful time. And my son-in-law's family was there, so that's where we started off, and then did our traveling. And that's actually where my daughter and son-in-law, they got married in New Zealand. So it was just lovely. I'd highly recommend it.
What are your perspectives on, or do you have a specific religion yourself?
Oh yes, I'm an Anglican, and I've been, you know, either Church of England, which is Anglican in England, or an Anglican all my life, and I will remain so.
Has it played a large role in your life?
Sometimes it has, and played a large role in my parents' life, and it really gave you something to hang on to be quite honest with you. You know, when you'd go to church, if you know, for the first time, we always seemed to meet lovely people, our very best friends. We used to go to the cathedral in Ottawa, and our best friends had just arrived. We met them, and we're still friends. And that was a long time ago.
So what words of wisdom, or what have you learned over your lifetime that you'd like to share with younger generations?
If I was going to give young people advice, and from what I can see, I think they are, I would say volunteer. I made more friends and had more fun through volunteering than I'll, you know, I just so appreciate it. And it was such fun. But I don't know whether people, they seem so busy with their computers. You know, one day I was so shocked. Eric and I went down to Trinidad and Tobago, and we were sitting in a lovely hotel, and it was just lovely. And we were talking, we were sitting at a table, and Eric said, "Look around you, darling." And I looked around, and everybody was sitting with their little gizmo, not talking to each other, talking to this wretched thing. And I am absolutely convinced that computers are probably going to be the end of us. They really spoil conversation.
You're such a great personality. I have some cards with just random questions on them. Just short answer them and see what we come up with, okay?
Yeah.
We'll just spitball it here.
Okay, let me see, and maybe I can. They're hysterical.
So what does it ask?
Legs as long as fingers, or fingers as long as legs? I have no idea. It's hysterical. I don't understand.
You have to pick. Would you rather have...
Oh, I would rather have legs as long as fingers. That is amazing. I've never seen cards like that. This is great fun. I love things like this. What is your all-time favorite smell? A woolen blanket. Oh, what are your top 3 favorite movies? The Greatest Show on Earth, Captain Horatio Hornblower, and Gone with the Wind. Describe your perfect day. Oh, get up in the morning, have a nice breakfast, maybe go for a walk, read a little bit. My favorite day, perfect day, is starting with the Globe and Mail. If I don't have the Globe and Mail, I just don't exist. And in the Globe and Mail, there's a nice bridge section and everything, and it's wonderful. So I start with that, then I have a pleasant morning, hopefully talking with people, a nice lunch, and then in the afternoon, in my old age, I do have a little rest, and then maybe do something with friends in the afternoon, have a nice supper, and after supper, watch Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune and anything else that attracts me on the television and have a lovely evening. Describe your perfect 3-course meal. Oh, shrimp cocktail, roast beef and Yorkshire pudding, nice vegetables, and then a nice parfait. I have no idea. Have hiccups for the rest of your life or feel like you need to seize and not be able to. I would not actually feel like you need to sneeze and not be able to. But that's a ridiculous question. You're fun, I'm telling you. Would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or 1 horse-sized duck? Have no idea. Absolutely. What were you passionate about as a child? Reading. And I was. If I couldn't read, I was like a little monster. I remember being older and getting on the plane from Newfoundland to Ottawa, and there was nothing to read. By accident, I hadn't got my book with me. I thought I'd go bananas. I love reading. You give me any book. The nicest thing about Anne Hathaway is that library. Oh, would you like to be famous? What for? No. Oh, I don't want to be famous, but I want to be known as a happy, generous, fun-loving person. What is the most trouble you got into as a child? Told a lie to my mother. What is the most important decision you have made? I think getting married to my husband. If you could be any animal, which one and why? I'd probably be a hound, a small hound, and I have no idea why. Because they run and they go after things. How different was your life 1 year ago? Oh, it was just the same because I was here. When was the last time you cried? When everybody was saying such love about Eric when he died. Do you know, we had the most lovely service and people told me things I didn't know about him. And I knew he was a volunteer, that's what he did. And he loved it. And he loved to travel, as you have gathered. What has been your greatest challenge? Oh, not to be bossy. If you could wake up tomorrow with any new ability, what would it be? To mind my own business.
You don't have no chance of that, huh? You can't mind your own business? Is that what you're saying?
I have great difficulty. Describe your childhood home. It was so happy, and you know, my mother and father. Shall I tell you another funny thing?
Absolutely.
This will make you laugh. Daddy was wonderful, but I did get cross with him, you know. I was furious with him, and I thought, I'm going to run away. This was in Birmingham. It was a Sunday. So I'll teach him. So I didn't pack anything. I just left the house. And I went out all afternoon, and it was so boring because it was Sunday. And in England on a Sunday, all the shops were closed. So I got home, and I thought, oh, they'll have really missed me. And you know what Daddy said? And who gave you permission to come home? But that was, and you know, with his arms open. Would you rather have a dragon or be a dragon? Oh, I'll have a dragon. I don't want to be a dragon. If money were no object, what would you do all day? I'd probably help others. Yeah, I really would. If money was no object, I'd listen to people's stories and I would help them in the best possible way that I could. Because boy, I've heard some stories. You know, when you have a domestic personnel agency, you hear all those stories.
I bet.
What is the worst injury you've had? Oh, this'll make you laugh. I was at St. Andrew's Church. Suddenly, all the fire alarms went off, and we were actually having a little sale outside the church. Smoke was obviously had set all the alarms off. And so the fire department came. Well, I was so embarrassed because I thought, I'd heard that they'd charge under false pretense, So I ran across the grass to tell them that I was really sorry, but it was a false alarm. And I twisted my foot, like my ankle, like you wouldn't believe. And actually, I broke my leg.
Right? Was that fun?
Yes.
Good.
It really was fun. I really enjoyed it, and I'm so glad that I did it. I think it's so important because I thought, this has made me think about all sorts of things that I would never have remembered. And it's so important that you have memories because no one can take them away from you.